The question is, at the end, we have spheres of influence, and then we have to reform these spheres of influence at the individual level and come to all the levels. And this is what we find in the Sufi tradition, saying, for example, and get that right, also coming from Al-Quran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God is not going to change a society if they don't change what is inside. Meaning what? Meaning your understanding of values and the way you behave. So it starts with the individual, but then it has to be connected to the community, and it has to be connected to our companies. It has to be connected with our professions, but in the light of the big picture, not something which is specific. So being ethical in details doesn't make it. We have to have the big picture, the big philosophy of life. And we don't have a problem with this. Islam is a philosophy of life. And it has to do with this connection and this implementation that we have. And in this, we have every one of us here. We need to do something which is starting our personal responsibility. And in all the tradition, there is no ethics, there is no values and virtues if at the personal level, there is no sense of responsibility. And the sense of responsibility is always to educate ourselves and the people around us with this understanding that we are responsible and we have to decide. And it means here to decide three things. What are the values that we cherish? The second, what are the priorities? And here, the priorities is something which, once again, it's important, a sense of priorities. And it starts with a very important thing, and this is where we are not sharing the connection between responsibility and the sense of guilt that we find in the Christian tradition, or even now in the West. The West is very often connecting the sense of morality or ethics with a very old sense of being guilt. So in fact, if there is something wrong, it means that you should be guilty of something. In Islam, it's always starts with innocence and responsibility. And the concept of innocence here, it's a very important thing. You will see that all the philosophers that rejected morality, and the first of them and the last of them, the last metaphysician in the Western tradition is Nietzsche. He had a problem with ethics and morality in the West because, in fact, what he felt is every time you speak about morality, you are talking about my guilt, the fact that I'm guilty somewhere. And Islam is not saying this. Every time we speak about ethics is you are responsible. Innocent, but responsible. And if you don't do it, it's your responsibility. لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. No one is going to be asked about what you did. You are going to be asked, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. God is not asking you more than what you can do, but what you can do on the personal level is your responsibility. Not because you are guilty, but you are responsible. You have a mind, you have a will, irada, and then you have freedom to do it. And in the circle of our responsibility is very important, because when you are a professional, this is where you have to determine, to circumscribe, to know what is your responsibility. You cannot just say, it's not me. You cannot always blame the others. And this is a game that we like, Muslims of today. It's to blame the West. It's to blame the others. We are victims. And Allah is never telling us that we are victims. Never. Victimhood is not Islamic. To be tested is Islamic as a responsible human being, not as a victim. Nurturing the victim mentality is the opposite of the ethical mind. The ethical mind in our tradition is dignified, free, and subject. You have to take your decision. Mukallaf, you have to take your decision. So it's an individual mindset. It's a philosophy of life that is important. Having said that, let me come to the last part of my talk, where we have to translate this into something which is now from life to professions. There are things that we have just, there are lists of values and ethical values that we have to bring to the fore and to highlight in our discussion. But there are things that we need to start with in a very simple way, and then to translate this in our profession. The first is just what I said when I was talking about that, is the sense of innocence. And we have to celebrate this as human beings. And very often in the way we start with our education, with our kids, the fact that they have to go from innocence, remember this was a big discussion among scholars. But your sons and daughters, before getting the age of reason, they are praying without praying. They are celebrating God without celebrating God. They don't know, but their very nature is celebrating. They are innocent and in prayer, like the birds, like the trees, and like the stars. الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان. So this nature is celebrating. It's innocence, it's natural. So we have this very positive way of looking at life, positive way of looking at celebrating God. The second, which is important when it comes to, it's part of our dignity, we have it. Remember this, because it has to be, it will have an impact in our professions. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We gave dignity to human beings. We dignified humanity. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Meaning, every human being, any human being, Muslims and non-Muslims, poor or rich. And sometimes when you look at the way Muslims are dealing with poor people, the way Muslims are dealing with people of other color or other religion, they are forgetting the very meaning of this, which is first dignity. It's a very important. It's a principle at the beginning and it's a goal in Islamic terms. Any society, any educational system, any economic system, any political system, any work system, job system, which is not protecting the dignity of every human being, Muslims or not, is unethical and has to be reformed. Which means, from our understanding, that we have to resist, we have to be aware. And anyone who can ask about the workers, are they Muslims or not, you should start by saying silly and wrong question. We don't ask about the religion, and we don't ask about the color, and we don't ask about the social status of people. Dignity is a principle. And this dignity is based on freedom, the freedom to decide. There is no dignity without freedom. Ibn Kathir, when he was talking about sujood al-malaika in front of human beings, why they were prostrating, the angels were prostrating in front of Adam, alayhi salam, was saying two things are defining human dignity. The first is knowledge. عَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. It's knowledge. And the second is freedom, because they can choose. While the malaika, the angels, are not choosing. They are celebrating God in a permanent way, without choice, without will. So freedom, it's important here. Dignity, it's important. And there are two things that we find which is quite interesting when it comes to starting the principles is justice. Justice, you will find this in all the treatises of scholars, fuqaha, but also philosophers, and in the Islamic tradition. In Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, when he was, or Miskawayh, for example, the philosophers, or you can come to all, Ibn Taymiyyah, for example, the fuqaha, they are all saying justice is an essential dimension of our ethics when it comes to work. So when it comes to companies, when it comes to business, when it comes to profession, you have to care about dignity, you have to care about freedom, you have to care about justice. And what we find in many books that I always want to stress, and I've been saying this for almost 30 years, because I think that is one of the most important values lacking within the Muslim majority countries today and the Muslim communities wherever we are. There is no way of being ethical in a world which is losing ethics if we don't know the meaning of courage. الشجاعة. And the shaja'a, you will find this in all the philosophers, by the way. الفلاسفة, all the متكلمين, شجاعة. And the fuqaha